A 72-year-old man died this morning. Avoid these 5 deadly morning habits after 70. Senior health. On a misty morning in the suburbs of Asheville, North Carolina, where the mountains are still slumbering and smog hangs over the eaves, I received a phone call from the son of 72-year-old Walter Mitchell. He called, his voice choking on each word. "Doctor, my father passed away this morning. Without any warning." I was silent for a few seconds. I wasn't a doctor giving a lecture or a lecture. I was just someone who had spent most of my life with elderly patients, listening to their stories, witnessing their final moments, and sometimes things that might have been avoided if they had known a little earlier. Walter had no chronic heart disease, no terminal cancer, and no history of major strokes. He lived a simple life, like many others in America, waking up in the morning, drinking coffee, not eating anything, and then taking a walk in the backyard. But it was these seemingly harmless habits, repeated over many years, that were quietly pushing him closer to the edge of life and death. You know, there are deaths that come not because of fate, but because of indifference to the body's little warnings. And what always haunts me is people like Walter. They don't know they're going in the wrong direction because no one ever tells them, or at least tells them in a way that they can really listen. Today's video isn't for theorists. It's for you, those of you who are in your 70s or older, or have parents or loved ones who are. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I just want to tell you what I've seen, lived through, and can't forget, so you can see yourself in it and know that there's still time to change. Together, we will go through 5 morning habits that many older Americans still do every day, things that seem harmless but can be the silent bridge to a heart attack, a fatal fall, or a moment of being unable to get up. I will tell you a story, a real story, with familiar names, places, and situations in American life. And I believe you will not leave this video until the last minute. If you feel this is an important topic, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications now so you don't miss future videos with tips to help you or your loved ones live longer, healthier lives. And don't hesitate to share your story in the comments, or send this video to someone you think needs to hear it. Just one small change could save a life. Now, let's start with the first mistake, and I'll tell you a story that might make you rethink your morning cup of coffee. Walter Mitchell is not the only person I have met who starts his morning with a hot cup of coffee and nothing else. In fact, dozens, even hundreds, of my patients follow the same routine. They often tell me, "Doctor, I can't start my day without coffee." What they don't realize is that their bodies are like an unfueled car, trying to run on caffeine without any water in the tank. I remember well the case of Carl Thompson, 75, of Springfield, Missouri. He was a retired soldier who always woke up at 6 a.m., a habit he had in the military. The first thing he did was make coffee. Every morning he sat on the porch, looking at the old pine trees in his backyard, sipping it. No food, no water. One morning he stood up suddenly and felt so dizzy that he fell down the steps. His wife screamed for 911 and he, for a few seconds, lost consciousness. After being rushed to the hospital and running a battery of tests, the cardiologist there confirmed that he had orthostatic hypotension, a sudden drop in blood pressure when changing positions, and that the main cause was severe dehydration from a long sleep. His blood was thick, his heart was working twice as hard to pump blood, and his brain was starved of oxygen for that brief moment. It was a fall, maybe a minor one, but at that age, every fall had the potential to be incredibly dangerous. I told Carl something simple that would save his life later. Every morning, don't just drink coffee. Before you leave the bedroom, drink at least 1 glass of room temperature water. Nothing fancy, no lemon, no electrolytes, just water, so your body can refresh your blood, soften your veins, and ease the burden on your heart and brain. This is especially important after age 70 when kidney function and circulation are not as robust as they once were. And if you take your medication in the morning, as most older Americans do, that glass of water also helps the medication penetrate better, reducing the risk of stomach irritation and helping your body absorb it properly. And I don't say this to scare you, I say it to make you understand that a small gesture, a glass of water, can be the difference between a peaceful morning and an emergency 911 call. If you or your loved ones are still starting their day with coffee without anything else, I encourage you to try this change tomorrow morning. Let the water touch your lips before the coffee touches your lips, because sometimes that simple habit is the best way to enjoy more mornings with your family. There's one more thing I want you to really remember, something I didn't pay attention to during my early years. The moment you get out of bed in the morning, seemingly simple, can be more dangerous than you think. I once treated a woman named Margaret Hill, 78, who lived in Fresno, California. She was a retired elementary school teacher who enjoyed gardening, reading, and living alone. She was very active, walked every day, and had no serious underlying health conditions. But then one morning she fell in her bedroom. Her head hit the corner of the wooden table next to her bed, and she bled profusely. Luckily, she was able to call 911 in time. I remember very clearly when I asked her what happened, she said, "I just opened my eyes, sat up like every other day, and stood up immediately. I only took a few steps, and my face went dark. Then I didn't know anything anymore." The diagnosis was postural hypotension, like Carl's, but in this case the problem was not the water, but the speed. After hours of lying still while sleeping, blood pressure usually drops slightly. In young people, the body adjusts quickly. But in people over 70, the nervous and cardiovascular systems need more time to balance. If you stand up too quickly, the blood doesn't get to the brain in time. You will feel dizzy, lightheaded, and fall. I advised Margaret, and I advise you now, every morning after waking up, take your time. Lie down for an extra minute. Gently move your arms and legs, then sit up. Let your feet touch the floor, but don't stand up. Take 3 deep breaths. Place your hands on your thighs, feel the weight of your body. Then stand up very slowly. You know, I used to think, it's just getting up, what's the big deal? But then I realized, as an older person, every move requires preparation. It's like an old car. You can't just step on the gas as soon as you turn the key. You need to let the engine warm up a bit. And remember, falls are one of the leading causes of loss of independence in older adults. A fall, even without a broken bone, can cause loss of confidence, fear, and eventually limited mobility, muscle loss, and memory loss. I've seen it in too many patients, and I don't want you to be one of them. If you ever feel dizzy when standing up, or if you ever fall and ignore it, don't take it for granted. Your body is whispering an alarm. Listen, and give it a little extra time each morning, because the price of rushing sometimes is more than just a bruise. But sometimes the most dangerous thing is not the steps, but the breath itself, the moment you open your eyes. I once treated a man named Glenn Patterson, 74, who lived outside Lubbock, Texas. He had been a long-haul truck driver for more than 40 years. After retiring, he spent his time growing vegetables, fixing old cars in his backyard garage, and occasionally taking his grandchildren fishing on weekends. Glenn was never one to complain. He was a classic Texan, tough, quiet, and patient. But then one morning he called me. His voice was hoarse, his breathing was ragged, and he said, "I feel weird, no pain, but there's a pressure across my chest. I walk to the kitchen and I can't take a deep breath." I told his wife, Linda, to rush him to the emergency room. Luckily, they made it. Glenn suffered a heart attack just 20 minutes after arriving at the hospital. Doctors said if he had waited any longer, he would have died. Glenn's story reminds me of many older people I've met who often experience mild discomfort, chest tightness, heavy breathing, or feeling more tired than usual in the morning, but often chalk it up to just waking up, or stress, or aging. But in reality, their bodies are trying to sound an alarm. After a long night, your blood is usually thicker. Your blood pressure starts to rise again when you get out of bed. Your heart and blood vessels move from a resting state to an active state. And this is the most sensitive time for people over 70. That is also why most heart attacks, strokes, and respiratory complications occur in the morning. I always tell my patients, and now you, this. If you wake up with chest tightness, shortness of breath, or just a vague feeling of not being right, don't wait. Don't drink coffee and wait for it to pass. Sit still, breathe deeply, and if you don't feel better in 5–10 minutes, call a loved one or 911. You're not weak, you're alert, and that might just keep you alive long enough to have breakfast with your grandchildren tomorrow morning. After that, Glenn changed completely. Every morning he spent 5 minutes just feeling his body. No touching his phone, no rushing to make coffee. He called it his rest-stop minute, like when he drove on the interstate. He always checked the engine before leaving the rest stop. Because now, the car that needed the most maintenance was his body. You see, some people don't recognize the signs until it's too late. But I believe that if you're listening to these words, you're ready to listen to your body. Don't ignore any whispers, because sometimes it's your last chance to save your heart. There are mornings that seem to start out just right. You wake up, take your medication, and start your chores. But in reality, they're the start of a series of mishaps you don't even know about. I want to tell you about Alice Monroe, 76, who lives in Venice, Florida. A place that I believe many seniors in the United States dream of when they retire. Blue sea, beautiful sunshine, fresh air, and friendly neighbors. Alice used to be an accountant, living a very disciplined and meticulous life, a trait that she still has today. She has a very clear routine. Every morning at 6:30, she sits at the kitchen table, opens the medicine box, takes her blood pressure medicine, thyroid medicine, and then doesn't eat anything. It's not until around 10 o'clock that she starts preparing a light breakfast. She says, "I don't feel hungry early in the morning. I only need coffee to stay awake all day." Everything seemed fine until one day, while cleaning the bathroom, she felt dizzy. Everything was spinning, her limbs were unsteady. She fell to one side, hitting her shoulder on the edge of the bathtub. Luckily, there were no broken bones, but the shoulder injury forced her to rest for nearly 2 months. When I visited her, the first question I asked was, "What did you eat this morning before taking your medicine?" And she just smiled. "Same as usual, just taking your medicine." Therein lies the problem. Many medications, especially blood pressure, thyroid, pain, or cholesterol medications, have specific requirements for whether or not they should be taken with food. Some require an empty stomach to be absorbed effectively, but others, if taken on an empty stomach, can cause blood pressure to drop too quickly, irritate the stomach, or even reduce the effectiveness of the medication. Alice's case is a case in point. Her blood pressure medication works best about 30 minutes to an hour after taking it, but on an empty stomach, the body has no nutritional buffer to regulate absorption. Blood pressure drops suddenly, and the body doesn't have time to adjust. I'm not suggesting you eat a big restaurant-style breakfast, but a slice of toast, half a banana, or a few crackers can make a difference. It helps the medication go down more smoothly, helps your stomach settle, and reduces the risk of dizziness, falling, or losing consciousness. After that fall, Alice changed. Now she keeps a small box of whole-grain crackers next to her medicine box. Before taking her medicine, she always eats at least one piece of crackers, no matter how small, and drinks plenty of water. And she told me with a twinkle in her eye, I feel much less tired in the morning, and I'm no longer afraid to go to the bathroom alone. Dear friend, don't think that taking your medicine is enough. How you take it, and when you take it, is what makes it work or not. If it's been a while since you've reviewed your medication guide or asked your doctor about dietary restrictions, take a few minutes today to do so. It could save you from a fall, or worse. And if you're caring for an elderly parent, spouse, or loved one, don't just remind them to take their medication. Remind them to eat something light first. It's a small thing, but it could save them from much bigger consequences. And then we come to the final mistake, seemingly harmless, but very damaging to long-term health, starting the day with just a cup of coffee and nothing else. I immediately thought of Ruth Delaney, 79, who lives in Eugene, Oregon, a peaceful corner of the American Northwest, where autumns are golden and winters are foggy. Ruth is a gentlewoman who worked as a librarian at the city's public library for nearly 30 years. She lives alone after her husband died, and her daughter lives in Idaho, so she only visits occasionally. Every morning, Ruth woke up at 6:45, turned on the radio to play classical music, made a cup of black coffee without sugar, and sat looking out at the lavender garden behind her house. It sounded like a peaceful routine, the kind of leisurely retirement she would enjoy. But Ruth didn't realize it. For months, she hadn't actually eaten breakfast. "Doctor, I'm not hungry. Coffee is enough to start my day," she said during her routine checkup. But that day, I noticed that she was walking more slowly than before. She was also a bit more careful when standing up and walking through the door. I asked her more, and she told me that recently she almost slipped when she went down the back steps. There were also days when her legs were shaking while walking and she had to sit down to rest. I suggested a muscle mass and balance test, which showed that she was starting to show signs of mild muscle loss and deficiencies in B vitamins, potassium, and protein. Nothing serious at the time, but if left unchecked, the nutritional imbalance could quickly weaken her. Older adults over 70 need more consistent energy to maintain memory, keep muscles strong, and avoid sudden drops in blood sugar. Coffee may temporarily wake you up, but it doesn't provide real nutrition. In fact, if consumed on an empty stomach, it can increase stomach acid, making some people feel nauseous, shaky, or more anxious. I advise Ruth not to eat much. A hard-boiled egg, a small piece of cheese, or a few slices of whole wheat bread with peanut butter will do. It's not the quantity that matters, but the regularity. Breakfast helps stabilize blood sugar, fuels the brain, and prevents falls related to fatigue or poor concentration. And she did. 2 months later, at a follow-up appointment, Ruth walked into the room with a surer gait. She told me that she had made a habit of eating some yogurt and oatmeal every morning, and that she felt more alert and less tired. "I don't live on coffee anymore, Doc," she laughed. "You see, sometimes we just get used to a habit for so long that it no longer feels wrong. But your body remembers, and one day it will respond with a fall, a lingering fatigue, or an overly quiet morning. If you or someone you love starts their mornings with coffee, reconsider. No one is stopping you from drinking coffee, but don't let it be the only thing going into your body before noon. Nourish yourself consistently. You deserve to have the energy to get through each day, not just a temporary buzz in the first few hours." In your 70s and beyond, your body doesn't bounce back as quickly as it used to. It doesn't scream, it doesn't protest. It whispers, a little tiredness, a shortness of breath, a groggy morning. But if you listen, you can still get back on track. And if you change your morning routine, even one of the 5 I've listed, you'll rewrite many mornings. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found what I shared helpful, please leave a comment about what you learned or what one habit you will change tomorrow. Please subscribe and share this video with your friends and family, because one small action of yours could keep someone in your family for many more years.